On Sunday mornings, Caleb Nathaniel Whitmore stood behind the pulpit of Covenant Grace Church with the kind of presence that commanded silence before he ever spoke. The sanctuary in Savannah, Georgia filled early. Families in pressed clothes, retirees in the same pews they had claimed for decades, young couples hoping to build the kind of marriage Caleb often described from the altar. He did not shout. He did not pace. He delivered his sermons with controlled intensity, shoulders squared, voice steady, eyes unwavering. He preached discipline. He preached purity. He preached order. A house divided against itself cannot stand, he would say, one hand resting on the open Bible. And a family without structure will collapse under its own weakness. The congregation listened as if he were not only quoting scripture, but defining the architecture of their lives. At 48, Caleb Whitmore had built more than a church career. He had built an image, a shepherd of souls, a defender of traditional marriage, a man who believed that leadership began at home and radiated outward into the community. Under his guidance, Covenant Grace expanded its outreach programs, renovated its sanctuary, and doubled its attendance. His photograph appeared in local faith publications. He counseled couples on communication, fidelity, and moral responsibility. He spoke about masculinity as stewardship, not domination. And beside him, always poised, always composed, stood his wife. Eleanor Marie Whitmore had once lived in Atlanta. You're working in media strategy for a regional marketing firm. She was articulate, creative, and accustomed to fast-moving professional environments. When she met Caleb at a charity event 12 years earlier, she was drawn to his conviction. He seemed grounded, purpose-driven, different from the self-absorbed men she had dated before. Their courtship was deliberate and structured. Caleb believed in boundaries. He believed in prayer before decisions. He believed in clarity. "I don't date casually," he told her early on. "If I pursue you, it's because I see a future." Elena had smiled. "Then pursue me." Within a year, she left Atlanta and moved to Savannah. She left her position. She left her apartment overlooking Piedmont Park. She left the career she had built since her 20s. Caleb framed the transition as partnership. "I will build something bigger than either of us," he said the night before their wedding. At first, she believed him. In Savannah, Elena became the visible extension of her husband's ministry. She organized church events, mentored younger women, coordinated fundraising dinners. On Sundays, she sat in the front row, posture straight, hands folded in her lap, listening as her husband spoke about covenant and devotion. Members of the congregation often told her how blessed she was. "You have such a strong man," one woman said after service. "You're lucky," another whispered. "Pastor Whitmore is rare." Elena would nod politely. From the outside, their life reflected the values Caleb preached. They lived in a 2-story white home on Wilmington Island, in a quiet neighborhood where lawns were trimmed and porch lights glowed at dusk. And they hosted Bible studies in their living room. They prayed before meals. They kept their disagreements private. Caleb believed privacy was protection. "What happens in this house stays in this house," he would say, not angrily, but firmly. He managed the household finances. He reviewed major purchases. He preferred Elena to consult him before committing to events. He described these practices as unity. "A marriage thrives on alignment," he explained once during a counseling session with a young couple. "When a wife trusts her husband's leadership, there is peace." The couple nodded. Elena sat beside him, listening. Caleb was not a loud man at home. He did not slam doors or raise his voice without reason. His authority operated through tone, posture, and expectation. When he entered a room, the atmosphere adjusted. When he expressed disappointment, it felt heavier than anger. "You're drifting," he told Elena one evening after dinner, studying her face. "You've been distracted lately." "I've just been thinking about taking on some freelance work," she replied carefully. "Nothing full-time, just something to keep my skills active." Caleb leaned back in his chair. We've talked about this. I know. I just miss having something that's mine. You have this family. You have the church. That's not the same. Silence settled between them. Caleb's expression did not harden, but it tightened. Ambition can be a blessing, he said slowly. Or it can be a wedge. Elena looked down at her hands. Over time, small negotiations became unspoken rules. Caleb preferred certain dresses for church functions. He encouraged modesty in language and behavior. But he asked for her phone passcode, framing it as transparency. He checked their shared calendar daily. He reviewed emails when planning church events. Each action, individually, seemed practical. Together, they formed a structure that left little room for autonomy. Still, to the community, the Whitmores embodied stability. Caleb led marriage seminars titled Strength Through Structure. He spoke about accountability. He spoke about resisting temptation. He spoke about protecting one's household from moral decay. His sermons often returned to the theme of purity, not only spiritual, but physical. Your body is not separate from your soul, he declared one Sunday. Honor both. The congregation responded with murmurs of agreement. At church picnics, Caleb grilled meat while shaking hands with local officials. Elena laughed politely with other women, her smile practiced, her posture controlled. Photographs from those gatherings showed a couple aligned in appearance, unified in purpose. No one saw the narrowing space between them. No one saw the subtle shift in Elena's eyes when Caleb corrected her in conversation. No one noticed how often she paused before answering him, calculating the safest response. The Whitmores were not volatile. They were not scandalous. They were disciplined. And discipline, in Caleb's world, was sacred. By the time their 12th anniversary approached, Caleb's reputation had only grown stronger. He was invited to speak at regional conferences. He advised younger pastors. He was described in local newsletters as a steadfast shepherd in uncertain times. He believed that description. He believed in order, in control, in moral clarity. He believed that if he maintained structure, at church, at home, within himself, nothing would unravel. What he did not recognize was that structure without compassion can harden into something else. And when identity is built entirely on image, even the smallest crack can feel like collapse. From the outside, Caleb Whitmore was the embodiment of conviction. Inside his home, the pressure to preserve that image was already building. The shift did not happen all at once. It never does. After 12 years of marriage, Caleb Whitmore and Elena no longer argued about large decisions. They argued about tone, about timing, about posture. The fractures were subtle, hairline cracks beneath polished devotion. From the pulpit, Caleb spoke of grace. At home, he spoke of standards. Elena learned to measure her responses carefully. And a sigh could be interpreted as disrespect. A delayed answer could be read as defiance. Caleb did not call it control. He called it alignment. "You've been distant lately," he said one evening while reviewing the church budget at the kitchen table. "I've just been tired," she replied. "Tired from what?" She hesitated. That pause was enough. "From feeling like I'm being evaluated all the time," she said finally. Caleb set his pen down slowly. "Evaluated?" "Yes, like I'm constantly being corrected." "I correct because I care," he answered. "Leadership isn't cruelty, it's responsibility." Elena stared at the hardwood floor. Sometimes it feels like surveillance. The word hung in the air longer than either of them expected. Caleb did not yell. He rarely did. He leaned back in his chair. I'm studying her the way he studied scripture, looking for weakness in interpretation. "You're misreading protection as control," he said. "Maybe I need less protection. Or maybe you need more humility." The conversation ended there. Caleb returned to his paperwork. Elena cleared the dishes. In the months that followed, the distance between them grew not in explosive fights, but in quiet withdrawal. Caleb began checking her phone more frequently. He framed it as transparency. Marriage shouldn't have secrets, he reminded her. There aren't any, she replied. Then you won't mind. He scrolled through messages, emails, calendar invites. He found nothing suspicious. But absence of evidence did not soothe him. It unsettled him. If nothing external was wrong, then the tension had to be internal. And internal issues were harder to discipline. Elena's body began responding to the stress before her mind did. Sleep came in fragments. Her appetite shifted. She experienced recurring discomfort she initially dismissed as hormonal imbalance. She scheduled a routine appointment with her physician but did not mention it to Caleb immediately. She did not want the discussion to become another debate about responsibility. Caleb, meanwhile, felt a different pressure. His influence in the community was expanding. Invitations to speak increased. Younger pastors sought his counsel. He began traveling occasionally for conferences. Every public appearance reinforced the identity he had constructed. Decisive, unwavering, morally anchored. At home, however, Elena's quietness felt like dissent. "You don't look at me the same way," he said one night as they prepared for bed. "How do I look at you?" "Like you're analyzing me." "I'm not. You used to admire my certainty. I still respect you." "That's not the same." The bedroom light cast long shadows across the wall. Elena turned off the lamp without answering. The first direct accusation surfaced 3 weeks later. Caleb had returned from a weekend conference in Jacksonville. Elena met him at the door with a polite smile, but he sensed something restrained. "Did anyone call while I was gone?" he asked. "Just church members." "No personal calls?" "No." He studied her expression. "Why are you asking like that?" she said. "I just want clarity." "You always have clarity, Caleb." "That sounds sarcastic." "It's exhausted." He stepped closer. "Oh, exhausted from what?" "From proving I'm loyal." "I've never accused you of disloyalty." "Not directly." The word lingered between them. Caleb's jaw tightened. "I expect transparency," he said, "and I expect trust. Trust is earned daily. I've earned it for 12 years. His silence was colder than anger. In church counseling sessions, Caleb advised couples to address insecurity before it became resentment. Yet inside his own marriage, insecurity fermented quietly. Elena's desire for independence felt like erosion. Her fatigue felt like resistance. Her private medical appointment, once he discovered it on the shared calendar, felt like concealment. "Why didn't you tell me about this doctor visit?" he asked. "It's routine." "Routine doesn't require secrecy." "It wasn't secret." "You didn't bring it up." "I didn't think it required a committee meeting." The sarcasm surprised even her. Caleb stared at her as if seeing someone unfamiliar. "You've changed." "No," she answered softly. "I've started speaking." That night, they slept facing opposite directions. From the outside, nothing appeared different. Caleb continued preaching about discipline. Elena continued hosting women's Bible studies. But privately, their conversations became strategic rather than spontaneous. They chose words like lawyers drafting contracts. Caleb began noticing minor details and attaching meaning to them. Elena showered longer than usual. She declined intimacy more frequently, citing discomfort. She seemed preoccupied during prayer, but he interpreted each change as a sign of withdrawal. "Are you seeing someone?" he asked abruptly one afternoon. Elena froze. "What?" "I'm asking a direct question." "No." "Then why does it feel like you're somewhere else?" "Because I don't feel safe being fully present." "Safe from me?" "Yes." The word pierced him more deeply than accusation. "I have never harmed you," he said. "Control can harm without touching." He stepped back as if struck. In Caleb's worldview, moral failure was external, an affair, addiction, betrayal. He did not recognize emotional suffocation as harm. He did not see how constant evaluation could corrode intimacy. To him, Elena's growing distance felt like rebellion disguised as vulnerability. In private moments, Elena began journaling again, something she had abandoned after marriage. She wrote about shrinking, about feeling observed rather than known, about longing for simple compassion without analysis. Caleb noticed the notebook on her nightstand. "What are you writing?" "Thoughts." "About me?" "About myself. Yourself isn't separate from this marriage." She closed the notebook quietly. The cracks were no longer invisible. They ran beneath the surface of every interaction. Yet neither of them acknowledged the depth of the fracture. Caleb believed discipline could restore alignment. Elena hoped space might soften him. Neither anticipated how quickly suspicion would transform into certainty. Neither understood that beneath devotion, pride had begun to replace love. And once pride becomes the foundation, even ordinary human vulnerability can feel like betrayal. The morning began in silence. Savannah was still gray with early light when Caleb stepped into the home gym at the back of the house. The room had once been a guest bedroom. He had converted it 2 years earlier, installing rubber flooring, a mirrored wall, a treadmill, and a weight rack. Discipline, he often said, started before sunrise. Elena followed a few minutes later, tying her hair into a loose ponytail. She had not slept well. The distance between them the night before had been quiet but heavy. She hoped movement might ease it. Caleb adjusted the speed on the treadmill without looking at her. 5 miles, he said. We've been inconsistent this week. I know, Elena replied softly. The machines hummed to life. The mirrored wall reflected 2 bodies moving in parallel. Married, synchronized, but emotionally detached. Caleb focused straight ahead. Elena kept her eyes lowered. For the first 10 minutes, there was nothing unusual. The rhythm of breath, the steady footfalls, the mechanical whir of the belt. Sweat formed at Caleb's temples. He felt control returning with each measured stride. Exercise was order. It responded to discipline. Then something interrupted him. He slowed slightly. His brow tightened. The faintest crease formed between his eyes. He inhaled again. "What is that?" he muttered. Elena did not hear him over the hum of the treadmill. Caleb pressed the stop button abruptly. The belt slowed beneath his feet. "What is that smell?" Elena pulled out one earbud. "What?" "That smell." She paused her machine, confused. "I don't smell anything." "It's strong." He stepped closer, scanning the room as if something visible might explain it. His gaze landed on her. It lingered. Elena felt it before he spoke again. "It's coming from you." The words were flat, not loud, not panicked, but unmistakable. Her face flushed instantly. "What are you talking about?" "There's a foul odor." She felt her stomach drop. Heat rushed up her neck. I've had some irritation lately. I scheduled a doctor's appointment." Caleb stared at her. "I didn't think it was urgent," she added quickly. "It's probably just an infection." The word infection hung between them. "Infection?" Caleb repeated, as though testing the weight of it. "It happens," she said quietly. "It's not uncommon." He stepped back as if proximity itself offended him. "How long?" "A few days." "And you didn't tell me." "It's medical, Caleb. I didn't think it needed a meeting." His jaw tightened. Anything involving your body involves this marriage." Her embarrassment shifted into frustration. "It's not a moral failure." "I didn't say it was." "You don't have to." The air in the room changed. The mirrored wall reflected their distance, 3 feet apart, facing each other like adversaries instead of spouses. Caleb folded his arms. "Are you sure that's all it is?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean." "No, I don't." He held her gaze. "Certain behaviors can cause symptoms like that." The accusation was not explicit, but it did not need to be. Elena felt the ground tilt beneath her. "You think I've been unfaithful?" she asked, disbelief cracking her voice. "I'm asking questions." "No," she said firmly. "You're accusing me." His silence felt louder than shouting. "Caleb, this is a bacterial infection. Women get them. Nah, it has nothing to do with anyone else." "How can you be certain?" "Because I haven't been with anyone else." The treadmill belt ticked quietly as it cooled down. He walked toward the window, looking out at the backyard. The oak trees stood still. The world outside remained undisturbed. "You've been distant," he said. "I've been overwhelmed. You've been secretive. I scheduled a doctor's appointment. You didn't tell me. Because I didn't think I needed permission to have a body." The sentence landed harder than she expected. Caleb turned slowly. "Don't twist this." "I'm not twisting anything." His breathing grew heavier, not from exercise, but from rising tension. "Purity matters." "Purity?" she echoed. "This isn't about purity, it's about health. To me, they're connected." Her chest tightened. You're turning a medical issue into a character trial. And you're dismissing how this affects me. How does my infection affect you? It reflects on us. She stared at him, stunned. "On us?" she repeated. "If something is wrong, people notice. People don't smell my body at church." "You don't know that." The absurdity of the statement hit her all at once. "This is insane." His eyes hardened. "Watch your tone." Elena stepped back, shaking her head. "I cannot believe this is happening." Caleb approached her again, his voice low and controlled. "If there is something you need to confess, this is the moment." Her eyes filled with tears, not of guilt, but of humiliation. "There is nothing to confess," she whispered. The room felt smaller, air thinner. He studied her face, searching for cracks, for tells, for betrayal. He found only hurt. But in his mind, hurt could be performance. "You understand how this looks," he said. "It looks like I need antibiotics. It looks like something has changed." "Yes," she replied. "Something has changed. You don't trust me." The words lingered. Caleb turned away again, pressing his palms against the window frame as if steadying himself. The image he had built, of order, of purity, of control, felt threatened by something as ordinary as a bacterial imbalance. And that threat felt intolerable. Behind him, Elena wiped her cheeks. "I have an appointment on Thursday," she said quietly. "You're welcome to come." He did not answer. The morning light brightened the room, revealing sweat on the mirrors, tension in their shoulders, distance in their stance. What should have been a moment of concern became a catalyst for suspicion. For what should have invited compassion ignited scrutiny. Neither of them raised their voices. Neither of them left the room. But something irreversible had begun. Because in Caleb's world, the body was evidence. And in that moment, he stopped seeing his wife as a partner in need of care, and began seeing her as a potential source of disgrace. The treadmill remained silent. And so did the grace he preached. The silence that followed the morning in the home gym did not cool the tension. It hardened it. Caleb did not apologize. He did not ask further questions. Instead, he withdrew into a posture that Elena had come to recognize. Measured, analytical, watchful. When he left for his study later that morning, he closed the door gently, almost respectfully. That quiet restraint felt more ominous than anger. Elena moved through the house in a daze. She showered longer than usual, scrubbing her skin until it turned pink. She stood under the hot water not because she believed she was unclean, but because shame had been planted in her. The accusation lingered in her mind like a stain. Certain behaviors can cause symptoms like that. The words replayed in her head. She had heard many sermons about moral decay, about temptation creeping into marriages. She had sat in the front row as Caleb warned couples that secrecy was the first sign of betrayal. Now she felt as though she had been placed inside one of his illustrations. By late afternoon, Caleb's suspicion had evolved into methodical action. He requested access to her phone again, though he already knew the passcode. "I just want clarity," he said calmly. "You had clarity yesterday," she replied, "and I need it again." She handed it to him without protest. She was tired of defending herself. Caleb sat at the kitchen table scrolling through months of messages. He opened conversations with her closest friends. He read email threads related to church planning. He checked deleted folders. He searched for unfamiliar names. He found nothing incriminating. But absence did not bring relief. It deepened his conviction that something was hidden well. "You've cleared your history," he said finally. "I haven't." "You're very capable with technology." She stared at him. "Are you listening to yourself?" He set the phone down deliberately. "Something changed in you." "Yes," she answered. "I stopped feeling safe." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you'll get." That evening, Caleb searched online medical articles about vaginal infections. He read about causes, symptoms, and risk factors. He lingered on phrases like sexual activity, bacterial imbalance, multiple partners. Though the articles listed many non-sexual explanations, his eyes gravitated toward anything that validated his suspicion. By the time Elena walked into the study, he had already constructed a narrative. "You didn't tell me how long this has been going on," he said without looking up. "I told you, a few days. Symptoms don't appear without cause. That's not how bodies work." "Then explain it." "I'm not a doctor." "Are you a liar?" The question was blunt. No pretense of subtlety remained. Elena felt her throat tighten. "No." "Then why does this feel like deception?" "Because you've decided it is." He rose from his chair, pacing slowly. "I have spent my life protecting this family's integrity. You know what scandal does in a community like this." "This isn't scandal," she said. "It's biology. You're minimizing it. You're magnifying it." Their voices remained controlled, but intensity pulsed beneath every syllable. "Have you been alone with any man recently?" Caleb asked. "I meet people at church every week." "You know what I mean." "No, Caleb, I don't." "Have you crossed a line?" She let out a short, incredulous breath. "You're asking if I cheated on you?" "I'm asking if you compromised this marriage." "No." "Swear it." "I don't need to swear." His expression darkened. "Then you're leaving space for doubt." "I am not on trial." His voice dropped lower. "Everything about this marriage is on trial." The accusation had fully formed now. It no longer disguised itself as concern. Over the next 2 days, Caleb's behavior shifted from questioning to surveillance. He followed her through the house with subtle glances. He reviewed security footage from their home cameras. He examined timestamps on her calls. He asked casual questions about errands and timing. "How long were you at the grocery store?" 40 minutes. "It's 10 minutes away." There was a line. "Was there?" She stared at him. "Yes?" He nodded slowly, as if cataloging data. Elena felt her autonomy shrinking by the hour. She considered moving the doctor's appointment sooner, but hesitated. She feared it would look like panic. She feared that any change would feed his narrative. That Wednesday night, they attended Bible study as usual. Caleb led discussion on marital trust. "Distrust begins in the heart," he said to the group. "Before any action occurs, doubt takes root." Elena sat beside him, her face composed. She wondered if anyone noticed the irony. After the study, a young couple approached them for advice. "We've been arguing about privacy," the husband admitted. "She thinks I check her phone too much." Caleb responded without hesitation. "Transparency eliminates suspicion." Elena felt the weight of those words press against her chest. Later that night in their bedroom, the tension finally erupted. "Why are you treating me like a criminal?" she demanded. "I'm treating you like someone who isn't telling the full truth. I have told you everything." "Then why do I feel this way?" "Because you're afraid." "I am not afraid." "Yes, you are," she said firmly. "Indra, you're afraid that I'm not under your control anymore." The accusation stunned him into silence. "I have never controlled you," he said slowly. "You manage my schedule. You read my messages. You decide what I wear to church functions." "That's partnership." "No," she replied. "That's supervision." His jaw clenched. "You're rewriting history." "I'm describing it." He stepped closer. "I will not be humiliated. No one is humiliating you. If word spreads, it won't." "How do you know?" "Because there is nothing to spread." He shook his head. "You don't understand how fragile reputation is. And you don't understand how fragile I am right now." The vulnerability in her voice should have softened him. Instead, it intensified his defensiveness. "You're making yourself the victim," he said. I feel like one." "Of what?" "Of your pride." The word pride struck harder than she intended. It touched the core of his identity. Caleb turned away, gripping the edge of the dresser. "Everything I've built is at stake." "What have I done to threaten it?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he asked a different question. "If the doctor confirms it's an infection, will you admit there's been neglect?" "Neglect?" "Toward your body, toward me." She stared at him, stunned by the pivot. "You think I caused this by failing you?" "I think something shifted." "Yes," she whispered. "I stopped performing." The room fell silent. For Caleb, suspicion had become certainty without proof. Elena's refusal to collapse under his questioning only reinforced his belief that she was hiding something. In his mind, innocence would have looked more apologetic, more submissive, more desperate to reassure him. Her calm felt like resistance, and resistance to him signaled guilt. By Thursday morning, the air in the house felt electric. Every glance carried accusation. Every movement felt scrutinized. Elena prepared for her doctor's appointment with a quiet resolve. She intended to bring back evidence, medical confirmation, a prescription, something tangible to dismantle his narrative. Before she left, Caleb stood in the hallway. "I want to see the results," he said. "You will. I want honesty." "You've had it." He held her gaze. "This is your last chance to tell me if there's more." "There isn't." He stepped aside. As she walked to her car, Elena felt a mixture of fear and determination. She still believed that once medical proof entered the conversation, the tension would dissolve. She believed logic could undo suspicion. Inside the house, Caleb stood alone, replaying every detail of the past week. The smell, the hesitation, the tone in her voice. He stitched them together into a story that felt coherent, even if it was unsupported. Suspicion had transformed into accusation, and accusation had become identity. In his mind, he was no longer a husband confronting uncertainty. He was a guardian defending his legacy. What he could not see was that the line between defense and destruction had already begun to blur. By the time Elena returned from her appointment, Caleb had already decided what the truth would mean. She walked through the front door with a small white pharmacy bag in her hand and a folded printout from the clinic. Her face was pale, not from guilt, but from exhaustion. The waiting room had been crowded. The examination had been clinical, straightforward. The diagnosis was simple: bacterial vaginosis, a common imbalance. Antibiotics prescribed. No evidence of sexual transmission, no complications. Science had offered clarity, but clarity was not what Caleb wanted. He stood in the foyer when she entered, as though guarding the threshold of the house itself. "Well?" he asked. It's an infection, she said evenly. Exactly what I told you. She handed him the paperwork. He took it without speaking and walked into the kitchen. He read every line. He reread it. He scanned for terminology that could reopen doubt. Elena, he said slowly. Yaz, this says commonly associated with changes in bacteria. Yes? What kind of changes? Natural ones. Hormonal shifts, stress, diet, sexual activity. That's not what the doctor said. But it's listed. She exhaled, feeling the futility creeping in. Caleb, she asked me specific questions. I answered them. There's nothing else. He set the paper down. So you expect me to just accept this? Yes, she said quietly. Because it's true. He looked at her as if she had misunderstood something fundamental. Truth isn't just a medical report, he said. Truth is spiritual. Her patience thinned. My body isn't a sermon illustration. It reflects covenant. It reflects biology. The conversation shifted in tone. It moved from suspicion to ideology. Caleb began quoting scripture, not loudly, not theatrically, but with conviction sharpened by insecurity. The body is a temple, he said. We're commanded to keep it holy. I have not defiled myself, Elena replied, her voice steady but wounded. Holiness requires vigilance. Vigilance is not the same as suspicion. He stepped closer, his presence pressing into her space. When something is out of order, I cannot ignore it. My pH balance is not rebellion. You're trivializing this, and you're sanctifying control. The word landed like a stone. Caleb's expression hardened, not in rage, but in defense. He did not believe he was controlling her. He believed he was shepherding her, correcting, guarding, protecting. In his theology, leadership demanded authority. Authority required clarity, and clarity required scrutiny. You've grown defiant, he said. I've grown tired. Of accountability? Of interrogation. He turned away, pacing the kitchen floor. His movements were measured, but his thoughts raced. For years, he had preached about temptation entering through small cracks, through secrecy, through pride, through bodily indulgence. Now, confronted with a physical imperfection in his own household, he felt exposed. If his marriage was not spotless, what did that say about him? The infection had become symbolic. It was no longer bacteria. It was disorder. That evening, he revised his Sunday sermon. Originally, he had planned to speak about perseverance. Instead, he drafted a message about purity, about vigilance in marriage, about guarding against subtle corruption. He did not mention Elena by name. He did not need to. On Sunday morning, he stood behind the pulpit with renewed intensity. Sin rarely announces itself loudly, he said to the congregation. It enters quietly. It festers beneath the surface before it reveals itself. Elena sat in the front row, hands folded, heart pounding. She knew the language was not accidental. When a household allows even minor compromise, Caleb continued, the decay begins internally. Several heads nodded in agreement. Elena felt as though she were being dissected in public without anyone realizing it. After the service, a woman from the church hugged her. That sermon was powerful, she said. Pastor Whitmore is so discerning. Elena forced a smile. Back at home, the tension escalated. You used me, she said once the door closed. I preached truth. You preached suspicion. If the message applies, that's conviction. It applies because you're forcing it to. He removed his tie with slow precision. If there is nothing to hide, why are you defensive? Because I'm tired of defending my innocence. You shouldn't have to defend innocence. Exactly. The irony hung in the air. That night, Caleb initiated a conversation framed as reconciliation. "I want to restore order," he said, sitting at the edge of the bed. "Order?" she repeated. "Yes, clear expectations, clear boundaries. I'm not a project. You're my wife, and not your subordinate. I am responsible for this household. You are not responsible for my bacteria." The sharpness in her voice startled him. "You've lost respect," he said quietly. "I've lost patience." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You don't understand the weight I carry. If this marriage falters, if the church falters, the church will survive my antibiotics. You're mocking me. I'm trying to survive you." He looked at her, truly looked at her for a moment. He saw exhaustion in her face. He saw strain in her posture. But instead of compassion, he felt threat. If she believed she was surviving him, then he was no longer shepherd. He was oppressor, and he could not allow that narrative. Over the next week, Caleb's theology grew sharper at home. He instituted new routines under the guise of unity, joint prayer every night, shared reading of scripture, discussions about accountability. Each practice felt less like intimacy and more like inspection. During one prayer session, he said aloud, "Lord, reveal hidden things." Elena felt the words like a blade. "There are no hidden things," she whispered once they finished. "There always are," he replied. "You don't trust me. I trust God to reveal truth." That's not the same. His belief system had fused with his insecurity. Doubt became righteous inquiry. Control became moral leadership. Accusation became spiritual discernment. Elena's sense of self shrank further. One evening, she stood in the bathroom, holding the prescription bottle in her hand, staring at her reflection. She looked tired. Not guilty, not corrupt. Just tired. She returned to the bedroom and found Caleb sitting upright, reading. "Do you ever wonder," she asked quietly, "if you're wrong?" He did not look up immediately. "Wrong about what?" "About me." He closed the book slowly. "If I'm wrong, truth will vindicate you." "It already has." He shook his head slightly. "Truth takes time." She felt something inside her shift, not anger, and not fear, but clarity. "This isn't about truth," she said softly. "It's about control." His eyes met hers. "You mistake leadership for control." "No," she replied. "You mistake control for righteousness." The line between theology and ego had dissolved completely. Caleb could no longer separate spiritual authority from personal pride. Every challenge to his suspicion felt like rebellion against divine order. Every assertion of Elena's autonomy felt like insubordination. The infection would clear in a week, but the infection of mistrust had already embedded itself deeper. Caleb began to believe that even if medical evidence absolved her, something intangible had shifted. He sensed independence where there had once been deference. He sensed resistance where there had once been admiration. And in his worldview, the resistance required correction. He did not see how far he had moved from love. He did not recognize that his theology had become armor for his insecurity. All he knew was that the image he had built, perfect shepherd, disciplined husband, moral leader, felt unstable. And he would do whatever it took to stabilize it, even if it meant redefining righteousness itself. By the second week after the diagnosis, the medication had begun to work. Elena's symptoms eased. The physical discomfort faded. The prescription bottle sat nearly empty on the bathroom counter, proof that what had sparked suspicion was nothing more than a temporary imbalance. But relief never reached the marriage. If anything, the improvement intensified Caleb's agitation. The physical evidence of infection had disappeared, yet the emotional fracture remained. He could not shake the conviction that something intangible had shifted inside his home. He felt it in the silence at dinner, in the way Elena no longer rushed to reassure him, in the steadiness of her gaze when he questioned her. The antibiotics had restored her body, They had not restored his authority. On Thursday evening, Caleb canceled a counseling session at the church. He told the administrative assistant he needed time for family matters. His voice was calm, measured. At home, Elena was folding laundry in the living room. The television played softly in the background, white noise more than entertainment. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her. "We need to talk," he said. She did not look surprised. "About what?" "About the tone in this house." She set a shirt down carefully. What tone?" "You've become confrontational. I've become honest. That's not the same. It feels the same to you." He stepped further into the room. The late afternoon sun filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. "You don't respect me," he said. She exhaled slowly. "Respect and obedience are not synonyms. I never asked for obedience. You expect it." His jaw tightened. "You're rewriting everything I've done for this family. I'm describing how it feels to live here." "And how does it feel?" "Like I'm constantly on probation." The words landed with finality. Caleb's breathing shifted. Not faster, not louder, but deeper. "I have protected this marriage from scandal, from compromise, from weakness," he said. "You've protected your image," she replied. The sentence hung in the air like a verdict. "My image?" he repeated. "Yes, the pastor, the shepherd, the man with the flawless home. You think this is about ego? I think it's always been." The accusation struck the center of him, not because it was loud, because it was precise. He turned away from her, walking down the hallway toward the bedroom. Elena assumed he needed space. She did not follow. Inside the bedroom, Caleb opened the closet and knelt in front of the small safe bolted to the back wall. He had purchased the firearm years earlier after a string of burglaries in a neighboring county. Protection, he had said at the time. Responsibility. His hands did not shake as he entered the code. The metal door clicked open. For a moment, he simply stared at the Glock resting inside. His thoughts were not chaotic. They were disturbingly linear. If authority collapses, chaos follows. If chaos enters the home, the foundation crumbles. If the foundation crumbles, everything he built disintegrates. He told himself he needed control, not violence. Control. In the living room, Elena stacked the folded clothes into neat piles. She heard the bedroom door open but thought nothing of it. When Caleb re-entered the hallway, the gun was concealed at his side. "Elena," he called. She turned toward him. The moment she saw the weapon, confusion flashed across her face before fear had time to form. "Caleb, what are you doing?" His expression was not wild. It was composed, almost solemn. "We can't continue like this," he said. "Put that down. You've dismantled the order in this house. I have asked for space. You've challenged my leadership. I've challenged your control." The words collided between them. "Elena, you've humiliated me." Her eyes widened. "Humiliated you? I had an infection. It exposed weakness. In my body. In my home." She shook her head slowly, disbelief overtaking fear. "You are not making sense." He stepped closer. "I cannot allow disorder to define this marriage." "Disorder?" she whispered. "You mean independence." "I mean decay." There was still time. There was still space for de-escalation. "Caleb," she said carefully, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You're standing in our living room with a gun because you can't tolerate not being right." His eyes flickered. "You think this is about being right?" he asked. "Yes. You've made me irrelevant in my own home. I've asked to be seen as equal." He raised the gun slightly. Not aiming yet, but holding it as punctuation. Yeah, you're forcing confrontation. No, she said. You are. She took a slow step backward. Please, put it down. We can get help. We can talk to someone. We've talked enough. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. You're not protecting anything right now, she said. You're destroying it. The word destroying echoed. For a split second, doubt flickered across his face, a crack in conviction. But pride sealed it. You left me no choice, he said. That's not true. You changed. I grew. He inhaled deeply. You defied me. I disagreed with you. The distinction mattered to her. It did not matter to him. What Caleb saw in that moment was not his wife of 12 years. He saw the collapse of hierarchy, the erosion of certainty, the threat of public disgrace if weakness ever became visible. He did not scream, but he did not curse. He pulled the trigger. The first shot shattered the silence of the house. Elena staggered backward, shock overtaking comprehension. Caleb. Another shot, and another. The sound reverberated through the walls, through the quiet suburban street outside, through the image he had spent years constructing. She fell to the floor. He kept firing. Not in frenzy, in repetition. Each round an attempt to silence the confrontation he could not win. By the time the magazine emptied, 15 shots had been discharged. The house fell silent except for the ringing in his ears. Elena lay motionless on the hardwood floor, the folded laundry scattered around her. Caleb stood there, chest rising and falling, staring at what he had done. The weapon felt heavier now. For several seconds, there was no theology, no scripture, no leadership, so only consequence. Outside, a neighbor stepped onto her porch, startled by the rapid gunfire. Another dialed 911. Caleb walked to the couch and sat down. He placed the gun carefully on the coffee table in front of him. His breathing slowed. He did not attempt to flee. When the sirens approached, he remained seated. The front door burst open minutes later. Officers entered with weapons drawn. Drop your hands. He lifted them calmly. She forced my hand, he said. On the floor behind him, the life he claimed to protect had ended. The shepherd had chosen control over compassion. And in that choice, he had shattered everything he believed he was defending. The sirens faded into the humid Savannah night, replaced by the cold efficiency of procedure. That Caleb Whitmore was handcuffed on his own front lawn while neighbors watched from behind curtains and half-open doors. Blue and red lights washed across the white siding of the house that had once hosted Bible studies and prayer circles. Officers moved in disciplined patterns, clearing rooms, securing the weapon, photographing shell casings scattered across the hardwood floor. 15 markers were placed beside 15 brass casings. Inside, Elena's body remained where she had fallen. The folded laundry lay beside her, domestic and ordinary against the violence of what had just occurred. Detective Marcus Hale arrived within the hour. Mid-50s, steady eyes, a man who had seen enough domestic tragedies to recognize the quiet pattern beneath them. He surveyed the scene without spectacle. No overturned furniture, no signs of struggle, and no forced entry. He paused at the living room doorway. "Single shooter?" he asked a responding officer. "Yes, sir. Husband surrendered without resistance." Hale nodded once. In the kitchen, officers found paperwork from the clinic still resting on the counter, the prescription bottle in the bathroom, the bedroom safe open, order everywhere, except for what mattered. Caleb sat in the back of a patrol car, staring straight ahead. His posture remained upright, composed, almost pastoral. When Detective Hale approached the vehicle, Caleb lifted his gaze calmly. "Pastor Whitmore," Hale said evenly. "I'm Detective Hale." Caleb nodded. "I know who you are. Can you tell me what happened tonight?" There was no visible tremor in his voice when he answered. "She dismantled our marriage." "That's not what I asked." She forced confrontation. Did she attack you? No. Did she threaten you? No. Then why 15 shots? A brief pause. I lost control. Hale studied him carefully. The words sounded rehearsed. 15 rounds isn't a loss of control, Hale said quietly. That's sustained action. Caleb's jaw tightened slightly. You don't understand the context. Help me understand it. She defied the order of our home. Hale did not respond immediately. He had heard similar phrases before. Different vocabulary, same pattern. Was she unfaithful? Hale asked. Caleb hesitated. I believe she compromised our covenant. Do you have evidence of that? No. Did the doctor's report confirm infidelity? It confirmed infection. That's not the same thing. Caleb looked away. At the station, the interrogation room felt stark compared to the polished wood of the church pulpit. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A recording device blinked red. Hale placed the clinic paperwork on the metal table between them. She saw a doctor, Hale said. Bacterial vaginosis, common, treatable, non-specific cause. Caleb remained silent. There's no evidence of sexual transmission, Hale continued. Caleb's composure began to fracture, not outwardly, but internally. She changed, he insisted. Changed how? She challenged my authority. Hale leaned back in his chair. So you shot her? Caleb inhaled sharply. It wasn't that simple. Explain it to me. She humiliated me. By having an infection? By refusing to submit. The word submit echoed in the small room. Hale let the silence stretch. Pastor, he said finally, Indra's submission isn't a legal defense. Outside the station, the news had already begun to spread. A police scanner transmission reached a local reporter within minutes of the initial call. By midnight, headlines circulated online. Savannah pastor arrested in wife's shooting. By morning, national outlets picked up the story. Photographs of Caleb in his clerical collar appeared beside images of the crime scene. The contrast was jarring: sanctuary and squad car, pulpit and police tape. Members of Covenant Grace Church gathered in the parking lot the next day. Some prayed, some wept. Some refused to believe the reports. He's a man of God, one woman told a television camera. There has to be more to it. There is more, Detective Hale said during a press briefing. There are 15 rounds fired. Inside the Whitmore home, the forensic teams documented every detail: the spacing of shell casings, the trajectory of bullets, the distance between shooter and victim, no sign of self-defense, no struggle, no interruption between shots. It was not chaos. It was repetition. Elena's medical records were subpoenaed. Text messages between her and friends were reviewed. In those messages, she wrote about feeling scrutinized, about feeling small, about feeling watched. One message, sent a week before her death, read, I feel like I'm disappearing in my own house. The phrase lingered with investigators. Meanwhile, Caleb's sermons were pulled from the church website. Reporters dissected old recordings. In one clip, he said, A household without discipline collapses from within. The line replayed across evening news broadcasts. Detective Hale met with Elena's physician. Sae, any indication of infidelity? He asked. None, the doctor replied firmly. Her condition was consistent with stress and hormonal fluctuation. Stress. Hale noted it. Back at the station, he sat across from Caleb once more. She wasn't unfaithful, Hale said plainly. Caleb's composure wavered. She resisted me. That's not a crime. It undermines leadership. You're not in a church right now, Hale replied. You're in a homicide investigation. The weight of that reality finally began to settle. In the days that followed, the image of the perfect shepherd unraveled piece by piece. Congregants discovered that Caleb had been checking Elena's phone regularly, that he monitored her schedule, that he preached purity with increasing intensity in the weeks leading up to the shooting. And a former church member came forward to say she had once felt intimidated during marriage counseling sessions. He talked about authority like it was absolute, she told reporters. The narrative shifted, no longer a sudden loss of control. A pattern. Caleb's mug